The morning sun cast long shadows across the dusty plains of Kepler 442b as the human relief convoy made its final approach to New Haven Colony. Captain Sarah Chen adjusted her headset and checked the cargo manifest one more time. 43 transport ships filled with medical supplies, food rations, and water purification systems. Everything the colonists desperately needed after the devastating plague that had swept through their settlement. Control, this is Mercy Fleet Alpha. We're 20 minutes out from New Haven. All ships reporting green across the board. Sarah spoke into her communicator, watching the sprawling dome structures of the colony grow larger on the horizon. The response crackled back immediately. Copy that, Mercy Fleet. New Haven Control here. We've got landing pads cleared and medical teams standing by. You have no idea how grateful we are. The situation here is getting worse by the hour. Sarah's heart tightened. She had read the reports. Over 3,000 colonists infected with an alien pathogen that their immune systems couldn't fight. Without these supplies, half the colony would be dead within the week. The United Earth Relief Corps had mobilized this convoy in record time, pulling resources from across 3 sectors. Don't worry, New Haven. We're bringing everything you need and more, she replied, then switched to the convoy channel. All ships, maintain formation. Medical transports take priority on landing sequence. The relief convoy was an impressive sight. Massive cargo haulers escorted by a small fleet of defense frigates, their white hulls gleaming with the bright blue cross of the Relief Corps. They had traveled for 6 weeks through hyperspace to reach this remote colony world, pushing their engines to the limit. Lieutenant Marcus Rodriguez, Sarah's second-in-command, frowned at his sensor display. Captain, I'm picking up some strange readings on long-range scanners. Multiple contacts bearing 270. Sarah leaned over to check his screen. A cluster of unidentified ships was approaching from the far side of the planet. IFF signals? Negative. No response to hails either. A chill ran down Sarah's spine. This sector was supposed to be clear of military traffic. Distance? 30,000 kilometers and closing fast. Before Sarah could respond, her communications officer looked up with alarm. Captain, New Haven Control is reporting massive energy signatures incoming. They're advising all ships to take evasive action. The unknown ships emerged from behind the planet's largest moon, like wolves stalking prey. Sleek, angular vessels with dark hulls that seemed to absorb light. Sarah had never seen anything like them, but their intent was unmistakable as weapon systems began to power up across their formation. All ships! Emergency scatter pattern! Sarah shouted into her headset. This is not a drill! We are under attack! The first energy beams lanced through space like crimson death. The lead medical transport, carrying desperately needed antibiotics and surgical equipment, exploded in a brilliant flash. Sarah watched in horror as debris scattered across the void, each piece representing lives that could have been saved. "Return fire!" she ordered, but she knew it was hopeless. The Relief Corps ships carried minimal defensive weapons. They were built for mercy, not war. Another transport died in a ball of superheated plasma, then another. The alien attackers moved with predatory grace, picking off the relief ships one by one. Their weapons were devastatingly efficient, designed to kill quickly and completely. "Mayday! Mayday!" Sarah's communications officer screamed into his transmitter. "This is United Earth Relief Convoy Mercy Fleet Alpha. We are under attack by unknown hostiles. Repeat, civilian relief convoy under attack." The alien ships showed no mercy. They targeted the medical transports first, then the food carriers. It was systematic, deliberate. They weren't just attacking randomly. They were specifically destroying humanitarian aid. Captain Chen watched helplessly as 37 of her 43 ships were reduced to glowing wreckage in less than 10 minutes. The attackers hadn't even tried to board or capture anything. They had simply erased the convoy from existence. "Captain, we've lost main engines," Marcus reported as their ship shuddered under enemy fire. "Hull breaches on decks 4 and 7. Sarah's mind raced. They had to get word back to Earth Command. Someone had to know what happened here. "Emergency beacon! Launch it now!" "But, Captain, if we launch the beacon, they'll know we're still alive." "Do it!" The beacon shot away from their crippled ship just as another energy beam tore through their hull. Sarah felt the deck plating buckle beneath her feet as atmosphere began venting into space. The last thing she saw before the bridge lights failed was the alien ships moving toward New Haven Colony. She knew with terrible certainty that the 3,000 sick colonists below had no defense against what was coming. Emergency power kicked in, casting everything in an eerie red glow. "Hull integrity at 15%, Marcus reported, his voice barely steady. "We've got maybe 10 minutes of life support left." Through the crackling static of their damaged communications array, they heard fragments of transmissions from the colony, screams, weapons fire. Then silence. Sarah closed her eyes as their ship began its final death spiral toward the planet's surface. At least the beacon was away. Earth would know, Earth would remember, and Earth would respond. The alien attackers finished their work with clinical efficiency. They had destroyed not just a relief convoy, but hope itself. 3,000 colonists dead, 43 relief ships destroyed, over 2,000 crew members lost. But they had made one critical mistake. They had assumed that humans, like most species in the galaxy, would accept such losses as the cost of doing business in a dangerous universe. They had assumed that humanity would mourn, rebuild, and move on. They were about to learn how wrong they were. The emergency beacon tumbled through hyperspace, carrying its grim message toward Earth. Video footage of the attack, sensor logs, and the final transmission from Captain Sarah Chen. Evidence of an unprovoked assault on a humanitarian mission. When it reached Earth Command 72 hours later, the reaction was immediate and unanimous. Emergency sessions of the United Earth Council were called. Fleet Admiral Harrison himself took command of the response. The entire Sol Defense Force was mobilized, but this time they weren't sending relief ships. They were sending the fleet. The news spread across human space like wildfire. Every colony world, every space station, every military installation received the same message. Aliens had attacked a relief convoy. Unarmed medical ships carrying supplies to sick colonists had been destroyed without warning or provocation. The attack had violated every principle of civilized warfare. Even among the warlike species of the galaxy, there were certain lines that were never crossed. Medical ships were sacred, relief convoys were protected, the sick and dying were spared, but these aliens had shown no such restraint. They had murdered the innocent and the defenseless. They had killed those who sought only to heal and to help. Humanity's response was swift and decisive. Within 1 week, the largest military force in human history was assembled. 250 warships, ranging from massive dreadnoughts to fast-attack cruisers, 50,000 Marines, the most advanced weapon systems ever developed. Admiral Harrison stood on the bridge of the flagship UES Retribution, watching the fleet prepare for hyperspace jump. He thought of Captain Chen and her crew, of the colonists who had died waiting for help that never came. "Admiral," his communications officer reported, "all ships signal ready for jump." "Begin jump sequence," Harrison ordered. His voice was calm, but his eyes burned with cold fury. "Time to remind the galaxy why you don't attack human relief convoys." The fleet vanished into hyperspace, carrying with it the promise of retribution. The aliens who had thought themselves safe in the dark between stars were about to discover what happened when humanity went to war. The Skreath hegemony had ruled 17 star systems with brutal efficiency for over 3 centuries. Their philosophy was simple. The strong survived, the weak were consumed, and mercy was a disease that weakened entire species. From their fortress world of Nexar Prime, They had expanded across the galaxy through conquest and intimidation. High Commander Vextar stood before the massive tactical display in the hegemony's war room, his 4 arms folded behind his chitinous back. The holographic representation of human space glowed before him like a tempting prize. Rich worlds, abundant resources, and most importantly, a species that seemed to value compassion over strength. "The human relief convoy was destroyed as planned, Commander," reported Sub-Commander Kretha, her mandibles clicking with satisfaction. "Total annihilation. No survivors." Vextar's compound eyes gleamed. "Excellent. Phase 1 of the operation is complete. How did they react?" "As predicted, Commander. They are mobilizing their military forces. Our spy networks report massive fleet movements throughout their territory." The High Commander's thorax vibrated with what passed for laughter among his species. Fools. They think their primitive weapons can challenge the might of the hegemony. "How many ships are they sending?" "Intelligence estimates approximately 250 vessels, Commander." 250? Vextar's amusement grew. "They're bringing their entire military to fight us? How delightfully naive." The Skreath had carefully studied human behavior for months before launching their attack. They had observed how humans responded to threats, always with negotiation first, then gradual escalation. The destruction of the relief convoy was designed to provoke exactly this kind of response, a large but disorganized military strike that the hegemony could easily crush. "What they failed to understand," Vextar continued, addressing the assembled War Council, "is that we deliberately attacked their relief ships. We wanted them to know we have no honor by their standards. We wanted them to come charging in with righteous fury, blind to tactical reality." The other commanders chittered their approval. It was a masterful strategy. The humans would arrive angry and unfocused, perfect targets for the hegemony's superior technology and ruthless tactics. "Our fleet positioning, Sub-Commander," Kretha activated another section of the display. "The main battle fleet is hidden in the asteroid field of the Corveth system as planned. 300 heavy cruisers, 150 destroyers, and our flagship dreadnoughts. When the humans arrive at Kepler 442b seeking revenge for their precious relief convoy, we'll hit them from behind." "And our ground forces?" 15 divisions of shock troops are standing by on the conquered colony world. If any human ships survive our initial assault, we'll broadcast footage of the colonists we've captured. Let them watch their civilians die while we finish destroying their fleet." The plan was flawless in its cruelty. The Skreath had learned that humans formed emotional attachments to strangers of their own species. This inexplicable weakness would be their downfall. They would exhaust themselves trying to save people they had never met, leaving themselves vulnerable to annihilation. But there were aspects of human nature that the Skreath had failed to understand. They had observed human mercy and seen weakness. They had witnessed human compassion and assumed naivety. They had studied human reluctance to kill and concluded that humans were poor warriors. They had never seen what humans became when their mercy was met with slaughter. They had never witnessed the transformation that occurred when human compassion was answered with cruelty. They had never experienced the focused, calculated fury of a species that valued life so much that those who destroyed it indiscriminately became targets for complete elimination. The first sign that their intelligence was flawed came 3 days later, when their forward scouts reported anomalous readings from the human fleet. "Commander," the communications officer reported nervously, "our advance reconnaissance is sending conflicting data about the human force composition." "Explain." "They report the expected number of ships, but the energy signatures are unusual, much higher than anticipated." Vextar's mandibles twitched with irritation. "Equipment malfunction. Human technology is primitive. Replace the sensor arrays and rescan." But the new readings were the same. The human fleet was generating power levels that should have been impossible for their supposedly inferior technology. Worse, they were moving faster than any Skreath ship could match, their formation tight and disciplined. Sub-Commander Kretha, review our intelligence on human military capabilities. Commander, our data comes from direct observation of their patrol fleets and merchant marine. Basic fusion drives, simple kinetic weapons, minimal shielding. They should be helpless against our plasma cannons and quantum torpedoes. Then explain these readings. What the Skreath had observed were peacetime vessels, patrol ships designed for law enforcement and search and rescue operations, merchant marines built for cargo capacity, not combat. They had never seen the human military when it was actually preparing for war. They had never seen ships designed by a species that had spent millennia perfecting the art of killing other humans. They had never encountered weapon systems developed by minds that understood exactly how fragile life could be, and therefore how efficiently it could be ended. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler 442b system with a precision that made Skreath sensors scream in alarm. No scattered emergence. No formation delays. 250 warships appeared simultaneously in perfect attack formation, already accelerating toward their target. Admiral Harrison stood on the bridge of the UES Retribution, watching the tactical display with cold satisfaction. His intelligence teams had worked around the clock to identify the attackers, the Skreath hegemony, a predator species that had been expanding aggressively for 3 centuries, enslaving or exterminating every civilization they encountered. Admiral, his tactical officer reported, we're detecting multiple energy signatures in the asteroid field. Looks like they're trying to set up an ambush. How many ships? At least 450, sir. They significantly outnumber us. Harrison's expression didn't change. Excellent. That means we found their main fleet. Signal all ships. Primary target is the asteroid field. We'll deal with the planet later. The Skreath had made their second critical error. They assumed that humans, like most species, would prioritize the rescue of their civilians over military objectives. They expected the human fleet to rush directly to the planet, desperate to save any surviving colonists. Instead, the human ships ignored the planet entirely and headed straight for the asteroids. They had come not to rescue, but to destroy. The fate of the colonists, tragic as it was, would not deter them from their primary mission, the complete elimination of the threat. All ships, engage cloaking systems, Harrison ordered. The Skreath, watching from their hidden positions, saw something that defied their understanding of physics. The human fleet simply vanished, not just from visual sensors, but from every detection system they possessed. Advanced stealth technology that made their ships invisible to all known scanning methods. High Commander Vex Tar stared at his blank sensors in growing panic. Where did they go? Unknown? Commander, all contacts lost. The answer came 60 seconds later when the first human torpedoes began detonating throughout the asteroid field. Not the simple kinetic weapons the Skreath had expected, but antimatter warheads that turned entire asteroids into expanding clouds of superheated plasma. The hidden Skreath fleet found itself trapped in a killing field of their own making. The asteroids they had used for cover became weapons, as human engineers turned physics itself against them. Chain reactions rippled through the field as one detonation triggered the next. "Return fire! All ships! Return fire!" Vex Tar screamed. But the Skreath couldn't target what they couldn't see. Their plasma cannons fired uselessly into empty space while human ships struck from impossible angles, appearing just long enough to launch their attacks before vanishing again. It wasn't a battle. It was an execution. The Skreath had spent 3 centuries conquering primitive civilizations with their overwhelming technology. They had never faced an enemy that could match their weapons and surpass their tactics. They had never encountered a species that had learned to wage war with the same precision they brought to everything else. Within 4 hours, the mighty Skreath battle fleet was reduced to drifting wreckage. 450 ships destroyed with methodical efficiency. The survivors, those few vessels that managed to escape the asteroid field, fled in terror toward their home systems. But Admiral Harrison wasn't finished. As the human fleet regrouped, he opened a channel that broadcast across all Skreath frequencies. "This is Admiral Harrison of the United Earth Fleet. You attacked a medical convoy carrying supplies to sick colonists. You murdered unarmed doctors and nurses. You slaughtered civilians who posed no threat to anyone." His voice was calm, professional, and absolutely terrifying in its lack of emotion. "You wanted to see how humans respond to unprovoked attacks on humanitarian missions. Now you know. We don't negotiate with those who target medical ships. We don't show mercy to those who kill the defenseless. We eliminate them." The transmission ended, but Harrison's message was clear. This was only the beginning. The news of the Skreath fleet's destruction reached Nexar Prime faster than their few surviving ships. High Commander Vextar stood in the ruins of his war room, emergency lighting casting twisted shadows across damaged equipment. Half his military command staff was dead, killed when human hackers had somehow penetrated their secured networks and turned their own defense systems against them. "Report," he commanded, though his voice had lost its earlier confidence. "The humans didn't just defeat our fleet, Commander," Sub-Commander Kreetha replied, her mandibles trembling. "They annihilated it. 450 ships destroyed in less than 4 hours. They used weapons we've never seen before, technology that shouldn't exist." "What of our ground forces on the colony world?" "Gone, sir. The humans bombarded their positions from orbit with precision strikes. They somehow avoided hitting any civilian areas while completely eliminating our troops." Vextar's compound eyes narrowed. The humans had shown perfect tactical discrimination, something the Skreath had never believed possible in the heat of battle. They had killed every soldier while sparing every civilian. It suggested a level of military precision that defied everything the hegemony thought they knew about warfare. "What are they doing now?" "Unknown, Commander. After destroying our forces at Kepler 442b, their fleet disappeared again. Our long-range sensors can't track them." The High Commander was beginning to understand that he had made a catastrophic error. The humans weren't the weak, emotional species his intelligence had suggested. They were something far more dangerous. A civilization that had learned to wage war with the same methodical efficiency they applied to medicine and engineering. 3 days later, his fears were confirmed when human ships materialized in the outer system of hegemony space. Not just the fleet from Kepler 442b, but hundreds of additional vessels. Reinforcements had arrived from across human territory, and they brought with them weapons that made even Skreath technology look primitive. Admiral Harrison studied the tactical display showing the Skreath homeworld. Intelligence reports indicated a population of nearly 4 billion spread across 3 continents. Massive military installations, planetary defense shields, orbital weapon platforms. It was a fortress world that had never been successfully attacked. "Sir," his communications officer reported, "we're receiving transmission from the planetary surface. The Skreath are requesting negotiations. Put them through." High Commander Vextar's image appeared on the main screen, his alien features twisted with what might have been fear. "Admiral Harrison, I am High Commander Vextar of the Skreath hegemony. We wish to discuss terms." "There are no terms," Harrison replied flatly. "You attacked a medical convoy. You murdered civilians. You broke every law of civilized warfare." "It was a misunderstanding. We thought your ships were military vessels disguised as relief transports. Surely we can reach some accommodation." Harrison's expression didn't change. "High Commander, you broadcast your attack across all frequencies. You wanted every species in this sector to know that you deliberately targeted medical ships. You wanted them to know that the Screeth hegemony shows no mercy to the weak or defenseless. Admiral, please, we can offer reparations, technology transfers, territorial concessions. You can offer your unconditional surrender. Nothing else. The transmission ended abruptly as Vextar cut the connection. Harrison turned to his tactical officer. Begin the assault. What followed was a demonstration of military precision that would be studied in war colleges for centuries. The human fleet didn't simply attack the Screeth defenses, they systematically dismantled them. Orbital weapons platforms were neutralized by targeted electromagnetic pulses. Planetary shields were overloaded by precisely calibrated gravitational distortions. Ground-based defenses were eliminated by kinetic bombardment that left the surrounding cities completely untouched. The Screeth had expected a brutal siege, a grinding battle of attrition that would cost both sides enormous casualties. Instead, they found themselves facing an enemy that could strike with surgical precision from impossible distances. Human weapons reached through their defenses as if they weren't there, targeting only military installations while leaving civilian areas completely unharmed. "How are they doing this?" Vexatar demanded, as another military complex vanished in a flash of light. "Our shields should stop anything they can throw at us." "Commander, their weapons operate on principles our science doesn't understand. They're manipulating quantum fields, creating localized space-time distortions. It's like they're using the fundamental forces of physics as weapons." The truth was even more remarkable. Humanity had indeed learned to weaponize physics itself. Centuries of theoretical research had finally been given practical application. Einstein's equations became targeting solutions. Heisenberg's uncertainty principle became a cloaking device. The strong nuclear force became a tool for precisely controlled destruction. But the most devastating human weapon wasn't technological. It was psychological. As the Screeth military infrastructure crumbled around them, the population began to panic. They had been told for generations that their military was invincible. They had been taught that the hegemony's brutal philosophy made them superior to all other species. Now they watched helplessly as an alien fleet destroyed their defenses without losing a single ship. Within 6 hours, military resistance on Nexar Prime had completely collapsed. The planetary government contacted Admiral Harrison again, this time offering complete surrender. "Admiral." The new spokesperson was a different Screeth, one who had clearly displaced Vextar in some kind of emergency succession. "I am Acting High Commander Zarthek. We surrender unconditionally. Please, stop the bombardment." "The bombardment stopped when your military resistance ended," Harrison replied. "We don't target civilians." This simple statement had a profound effect on the watching Screeth population. They had expected their cities to be destroyed, their people enslaved or exterminated. That was how the hegemony had always operated. But the humans had stopped firing the moment military targets were eliminated. "What are your terms?" Zarthek asked. "The complete dismantling of your military forces, reparations to every species you've attacked over the past 3 centuries, war crimes trials for those responsible for attacks on civilian targets, and most importantly, a fundamental change in your society's approach to other civilizations." The terms were harsh but not impossible. The humans weren't seeking to destroy the Screeth as a species, merely to ensure they could never again threaten innocent civilians. But Admiral Harrison had one more message to deliver, and this one was intended for the entire galaxy. Open a channel on all frequencies, all civilizations, all species, all governments. When the connection was established, Harrison addressed the galaxy with the same calm professionalism he had shown throughout the campaign. "This is Admiral Harrison of the United Earth Fleet. 3 weeks ago, the Screeth hegemony attacked one of our relief convoys. They destroyed unarmed medical ships carrying supplies to sick colonists. They murdered doctors, nurses, and aid workers whose only crime was trying to help others." His image was being broadcast across thousands of worlds, translated into hundreds of languages. Every major civilization in the galaxy was listening. Today, the Skreath hegemony has surrendered unconditionally. Their military forces have been eliminated. Their ability to threaten others has been permanently removed. But this message is not about the Skreath. It's about something much more important. Harrison paused, letting his words sink in across the galaxy. Humanity has a simple policy regarding humanitarian missions. Medical ships are sacred. Relief convoys are protected. Those who heal the sick, feed the hungry, and help the defenseless are under our protection, regardless of what species they belong to. The implications of this statement rippled across galactic civilization like a shockwave. Humanity wasn't just protecting their own medical missions. They were declaring themselves the guardians of all humanitarian efforts. Any species that attacks medical vessels, any government that targets relief convoys, any military that threatens humanitarian workers will face the same fate as the Skreath hegemony. This is not a threat. This is a promise. The transmission ended, leaving the galaxy to contemplate this new reality. Humanity had announced itself as the protector of mercy itself. In the weeks that followed, reports began flooding in from across known space. Pirate attacks on medical shipments had virtually ceased. Governments that had previously targeted civilian relief efforts began offering escorts instead. The mere possibility of human retaliation had transformed the safety of humanitarian missions galaxy-wide. But perhaps the most significant change occurred within human space itself. The colonies that had watched the Kepler 442b attack with horror now saw their government's response. Earth had not just avenged a single convoy. They had made a promise to every human settlement in the galaxy. If you are threatened while trying to help others, the full might of humanity will come to your aid. Captain Sarah Chen, recovered from her injuries after 3 weeks in a medical bay, stood on the observation deck of the rebuilt New Haven colony. The settlement bustled with activity as new colonists arrived to replace those who had been lost. The alien plague had been completely eliminated by human medical teams, and the colony was stronger than ever. She watched as another relief convoy prepared to depart for a distant world suffering from natural disaster. This time, the convoy was escorted by a squadron of the most advanced warships in human space. The message was clear. Those who served others would never again face their mission alone. The galaxy had learned something important about humanity. They had discovered that a species which valued mercy above all else could become absolutely ruthless when that mercy was threatened. They had seen what happened when beings who dedicated their lives to healing and helping others were murdered simply for trying to do good. The Skreath attack on the relief convoy had been intended to demonstrate human weakness. Instead, it had revealed human strength, not just the strength of their weapons or their technology, but the strength of their principles, the determination to protect those who could not protect themselves, the willingness to fight not for conquest or resources, but for the simple right of good people to do good work without fear. As Admiral Harrison had promised, the galaxy would remember, and it would never forget the price of attacking those who sought only to heal and to help.